Gotta send a shout out, however, to some new Patreons on the Patreon page, which again is at patreon.com/Rasslin Rantin, RASSSLIN You can get tiers as low as $1 all the way up to $5 if you want to get the old school wrestling tier. We got to send a shout out to Tafari Johnson for being a new sign up and a Brandley for joining us on the Patreon team. I definitely enjoy it. We will be having our Q&A session coming up later this week for my patrons and another classic wrestling retro review. So stay tuned for that. Again, that's patreon.com/Rasslin with 3 S's. So let's start off with the pro wrestling world today. We had a crazy huge weekend last weekend. New Japan Pro Wrestling had the Wrestle Grand Slam shows at the MetLife Stadium over in Japan. Fairly decent show. New Japan still struggling, as everything is in Japan with the COVID restrictions and everything else. So we've got, I think the total is just over 4,000 people for both nights, which is really, really low. It really, really is weird to see a 50,000 seat stadium with 2,000 people in it. It just looks bad. I had thought originally that the whole point of doing these shows was so they could get 10,000 people and have them spaced out so they can make some money, but apparently that's not the case, which has me wondering and worrying whether or not that was a restriction or that the fan base of New Japan, because of the pandemic, has just shrunk and people are just not interested in going out and seeing the shows, and they've been kind of half-ass booking, so that definitely is a concern. Over here in the West, we had All Elite Wrestling, which basically just blew the doors off of everything this past weekend. It was the debut of CM Punk, famed wrestler, used to be in the WWE. Hasn't been in a wrestling ring as CM Punk. He did a couple little run-ins here and there under a mask on some indie shows, but this is the first time he has been on a Major League Wrestling show in 7.5 years. Last time was January 2014, the Royal Rumble that year. He was eliminated by Kane, and that was the last we ever saw of him in a wrestling ring. So this was his big return, and that was the big highlight of the show. I heard the show did about 165,000 buys, which is pretty damn good for AEW. It's, again, they're only barely over 2 years old. A promotion that's in a industry that has some issues within the community about how to grow, and I'll talk about that in a second. But AEW, you got to give it to them for All Out. I think at this point in time, if anybody's denying their relevance in the wrestling industry, you're just delusional. I mean, they not only did we have the debut of CM Punk in a match where he helped to elevate one of the fastest rising stars in the business right now in Darby Allin, you also got the forbidden door between AEW and New Japan continuing to open, as now Minoru Suzuki, the first of, I would consider, major league New Japan guys. I mean, Yuji Nagata and Satoshi Kojima are major league guys, but they were more of big time in the 90s. They're kind of older now and not really in the main card, on the main events in New Japan now. But Minoru Suzuki, even though he's been pushed down the card a little bit over the last year, he's still freaking Minoru Suzuki, and he just has a presence about him. Murder Grandpa came out as a big shock to challenge Jon Moxley, which that match will be happening tonight as I record this on AEW Dynamite. I'm definitely looking forward to that. And that was just the first of many, many surprises on that pay-per-view. You had Ruby Soho, formerly Ruby Riott of WWE. She made her debut, won the Women's Casino Battle Royale, so she'll be challenging Britt Baker for the AEW Women's Championship soon. We had the debut of Adam Cole, Bay, fresh out of NXT from a takeover just a couple weeks ago. His contract situation is is going to be stuff of legends. How hilarious it was that neither he nor WWE knew that his contract was ending a couple weeks ago, and it just slipped through the cracks. I mean, Adam Cole, the biggest star and arguably in NXT over the last couple of years, and the greatest worker they had, and they let him slip away like that. And the rumors are, as an addendum to that, the rumors are that Vince had come up with some plans for Adam Cole for SmackDown and Raw to keep him in WWE and from going to AEW. And the plan was to make him a manager. Adam Cole, what was he, like 32, 33 years old? A manager? They wanted to make him Johnny Polo, I guess. You can't, and people wonder why Adam Cole and all these people are going over to AEW. But yeah, Adam Cole was supposed to be a manager on Raw or SmackDown for somebody. No. So I'm happy to see him back with his buddies in the Elite. He immediately turned heel after making his debut and getting a big pop for it, which then was immediately followed by Daniel Bryan, or Bryan Danielson as he will now be known for the foreseeable future while he's still in the AEW. And Bryan came out to a huge pop, and that's been suspected for a very long time. People were waiting for it. Now, the rumor is that the Arthur Ashe Stadium show, which is coming up later this month, that was supposed to be allegedly his debut, but there are threats. This show is happening in New York that possibly there will be some heavy COVID restrictions. So I guess AEW didn't want to take the risk of debuting Daniel Bryan in front of a crowd that either couldn't vocalize or had to be diminished, or the show had to be canceled or moved or something like that. So it's really weird, but it worked out. And beyond the debuts, the show itself was just amazing. The Lucha Brothers and the Young Bucks tag team cage match is just something. I would suggest people watch that who aren't even wrestling fans. If you ever want to that's a match that you go to people who are not wrestling fans and you say, okay, this is why I watch wrestling. Watch this. Take 15 minutes and watch this thing, because this is freaking crazy. And that's the kind of match that will turn people who are into stuff like that, who don't watch wrestling though and think wrestling is what WWE does, and will turn them and go, holy crap, and you may convert some people over to that. The ratings for Rampage, however, this past week were back in the 600,000s. That time slot is just a bad time slot. Friday at 10 p.m. That's I got obligations and things that I need to do, that I choose to do on Friday nights. Watching wrestling isn't one of them. I always thought it'd be better if they took the 6:05 spot on TBS. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens in the future, because I think they're shooting themselves in the foot a little bit with this 10 o'clock time slot on Friday night. I think 6:05 on Saturdays might be better, but you never know. That could run into conflict with some pay-per-views they were doing if they were doing a Saturday night pay-per-view. But, nothing is in stone. They can always change it. And I think in the future, if the ratings continue to be like this, they probably will change it, because, CM Punk popped the rating, but, people just don't think about wrestling at 10 o'clock on Friday night. It's just not something you think about. The other matches on the card, there was so much great stuff on that show. Coming out of that too this week, we had the press conferences where everybody was talking about it. Everybody's so happy to be over there. Daniel Bryan's happy. Daniel Bryan's and Adam Cole did not throw shade at WWE. Both of them were quite happy in WWE. Both of them were used well. They're two guys who were used well in WWE, which is, I think, is probably more of that's probably more worrisome if you're a WWE sweaty, is that here, typically guys like Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho and, even recently with CM Punk, these are guys who had, grudges and gripes and issues with WWE's management and the way their characters were used and things that were promised that didn't come through. They had legitimate gripes. Now you got guys who didn't have any gripes and still don't have any gripes with WWE, still choosing to go to AEW because they've seen what AEW is, the excitement around AEW, and they want to be a part of it. And they want to do something different, and they want the creative freedom that comes with AEW, so that you can't get in the WWE. Daniel Bryan was the most gracious of all. I mean, he legitimately has family in the hierarchy of WWE with John Laurinaitis and so on and so forth. He said he loves Vince McMahon. He's good friends with Vince McMahon, but I think he was quoted as saying Vince is too overprotective of him, and he wanted to kind of expand his wings a little bit. And there wasn't really anything else for Daniel Bryan to do in WWE, and I think that's going to be another thing that's going to start motivating people to leave, is because, not that AEW can take too many more stars, but I'd say anything with Adam Cole. There really wasn't anything else for Adam Cole to do. The only thing they could come up with was him being a manager. That guy that young, that talented, no, because he's a smaller guy. So, yeah, a lot of those guys are going to wind up going to AEW, and I think it's probably a good thing. And it changes to NXT. if they come, when they come. I think if they are going to, WWE is going to this, just getting big, brutish, posing guys and girls and a lot of more blondes and stuff like that. If that's what they're going to do, then, it's a good distinction between the two brands, because NXT was the kind of one tether WWE had to the pro wrestling scene. That was the wrestling show in WWE. WWE other shows weren't really wrestling shows. They were shows that occasionally had wrestling on them, but NXT was the wrestling show that WWE still produced, and now they seem to be changing that, or at least they're rumored to be changing that soon. So another thing that came out of it this week is that Kenny Omega has hit number 1 once again, and Pro Wrestling Illustrated's top 500 or whatever it is. He's the number 1 wrestler considered, followed up by Roman Reigns and a couple other people. Kenny had a tremendous year. He didn't have any Kazuchika Okada level matches, but just the whole thing about him going around and winning all those titles and having some pretty damn good matches left and right. How can you deny Kenny Omega being the best? I mean, Roman had a great year, but the thing that Roman lacked was he did not have those performances that Kenny did. His was more character promo driven, where he was really good. Not to say that Roman didn't have good matches. Roman Reigns has had some of the better matches in WWE over the last year. But Kenny Omega is legitimately on a different level than a lot of guys. It's kayfabe and it's promo and it's hyperbole, but it's also not hyperbole. It's actually, the guy is actually on a different level. He approaches wrestling from a different way, a different unique way, which makes the majority of his matches and his whole presentation stand out a lot more. So hats off to AEW. Hopefully they continue to have the success that they have. And now it's just a thing about, now they've gotten all these people. There's a couple of names still lingering out there, like Bray Wyatt. I saw Kevin Owens is now kind of hinting about him leaving WWE and going to AEW. I think it's just, I think at this point they have enough people now. They've got more than enough people. They now need to just come up with some good storylines, and which they've been pretty good at doing. I would say about 80% of the storylines in AEW I find to be satisfying. So they got to focus on that. So we'll see where that goes in the future. As far as what WWE is concerned, their thoughts on this whole thing, the rumor is that the higher ups in WWE don't see Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson as big losses. You kidding me? Are you kidding me? Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole were not big losses. Well, they didn't move the needle. Nobody on your card's moving the needle. The only people who moved the needle for WWE these days was John Cena, who, he had to go away for almost over a year for people to actually want to see him come back again. I mean, you can't WWE. They can't rely, and this applies to AEW too, to an extent. But you can't rely on let's bring in Goldberg. Let's bring in Brock Lesnar. Let's do a thing with Becky Lynch. Let's do a thing. And let's bury all the people who are currently here in favor of these characters. With the exception of Roman, who they're trying to get to do this whole Legend Slayer thing. But you can't rely on that to pop a rating. Everybody else on the card, they just are not interesting. With the exception of what's going on with Matt Riddle and Randy Orton, the rest of the stuff on WWE's main roster just not hitting. Not hitting at all. So, and it's not fun. And that's the biggest thing that came out of All Out. All Out was a hell of a lot of fun from start to finish. And that is what's been missing a lot in Western wrestling, which is what Western wrestling excels at, is just being this big party. And you've heard, CM Punk and Daniel Bryan describe AEW as that. It's like a big party. And that's the way it feels. And that's a feeling that we had back in the old days in the Monday Night War. When you tuned into Nitro or Raw, it felt like it was like some big party was going on, and people were going to be celebrating and excited and happy, and not sitting on their hands or looking at their phones or chanting weird stuff because they're bored with what's going on and the show that's being presented to them. AEW, I always talk about being ahead of the audience. AEW was ahead of the audience so many times with that pay-per-view. And when I say ahead of the audience, it means they did stuff that it would take the audience a split second to realize what was going on, and they go, oh, that's what's doing. The perfect example of that was MJF's entrance in his match with Jericho, because he totally trolled the audience, and you thought Jericho's doing a countdown as an homage to his old characters throughout his career, because this was a match that may have been his last match, and then the graphic comes up. Jericho's last match, and you can hear the crowd. You see so many people posted up videos of it. You hear the crowd go, "Ah!" and then they started laughing when MJF's music came on because they had been trolled and they knew it, and it was great. That's the kind of stuff that that's being ahead of your audience, not being behind them, not having them knowing, exactly what's going to happen and not being excited about it. This is a totally different way of approaching wrestling. It's an old school way of approaching wrestling. Another notable note is that Vince McMahon apparently wasn't at Raw this week, and he wasn't at SmackDown a week or two ago. I don't watch those shows anymore, so I'm not sure if that made much of a difference. But I don't know what's going on with WWE. I don't know if if Vince is going to step down, Vince needs to step down, and whoever's going to take his place, I don't know. But I think the whole company structure is so much about just making money and just doing the least possible to make the most amount of money to appeal to the most people possible. It goes to what I was mentioning earlier that I was going to talk about here briefly. I'm going to talk about this more in another podcast or video, but let me get a drink here. Hold on a second. But the problem with the wrestling industry, and it has been this way for a long time, and it's still this way. You still got a big portion of it, especially here in the States. It's like this, is that it's a lot about following a brand, and instead of following what's good. And a lot of people, and this is always indicative when you hear somebody go, "Well, AEW hopefully will force WWE to get better." No, wrong way to look at it. Just watch the good stuff. Don't worry about WWE getting better. WWE gets better, great. They don't sit around looking at AEW and going, "Well, AEW is good now, WWE is going to get better." I don't care. It's like if PlayStation comes out with 5 really good games, I'm not going to sit there and go, "Well, I hope this makes Xbox make some good games." I don't, if American Idol has some really good contestants, I don't go, "Well, I hope Dancing with the Stars gets better contestants." Netflix came out with all those great. Remember, Netflix started blowing up. They had Stranger Things, they had Black Mirror, they had Daredevil. And everybody was going, "Man, all these original shows on Netflix are just killing it." Nobody sat around and said, "Well, I hope that means Hulu's going to make better shows." No, you just watched Netflix. You just played PlayStation. You know what I'm saying? So it's not, and that's indicative of why the wrestling industry has been so stilted, because when you have a lot of the fan base that's just hoping that this one particular brand gets better and everything revolves around it, and that's what your audience is. Again, SmackDown did 2.2 million viewers this past week. Rampage had 680,000 or something like that. Hasn't translated yet, because most of the wrestling audience is just going to watch WWE because it's WWE, not because it's good. And what happens with that is the places that are doing good stuff, they can't get the attention. Nobody's going to watch. Well, not nobody, but fewer people are going to watch it. And it's not about quality. It's about, the WWE logo. If the WWE logo was on it, then I'd watch it. But it's not WWE, so I'm not going to watch it. That's been a detriment of this industry ever since the Monday Night Wars ended. And the other side of it is, because WWE is not producing a very good product, and they don't have to, and they know they don't have to, and they're not even trying to. They're not even concerned about that. The audience continues to shrink. So we're going to see what happens in the near future over the next couple of years. AEW has now set itself up to take over and be the number one wrestling company. The question is now, can they do it? Can they be the number one wrestling company in the West? It comes down to two things. AEW being able to produce good shows and continuing to produce great characters and good storylines and good matches. And on the converse, the wrestling community. Is the wrestling community going to be able to let go of this, everything's got to be WWE, and even if something else is good, well, maybe that'll make WWE get better? Nope. Just watch what's good. Until that mentality gets in the wrestling community, unfortunately, I'm a little worried that no matter how good or how superior AEW show is from start to finish, they're never going to get over the 2 million mark, or should I just say the WWE mark, and as far as numbers are concerned, because you got a lot of sycophants in the wrestling community. Now, the other thing about that, though, that I think is a reason why AEW is doing what they're doing. I don't think AEW is going out trying to convert WWE fans. I think what AEW is trying to do, and it's been said many times, is get fans who used to be fans of wrestling and people who aren't fans of wrestling to look at what they're doing and going, yeah, this is not WWE. This is a little bit more, to steal from CM Punk's line, it's a little bit more punk rock than AEW, than WWE. So I don't know. We'll see what happens in the future, but we have entered a new era of All Elite Wrestling, and I'm very curious to see what they're going to do from here on out.